be talking with today. Maritza?
Kymber Menkiti, currently Keller Williams Regional Director for the Maryland, DC region. She is the first African-American woman and one of the youngest executives named to the role in the company's history. Prior, Kymber was president of sales for the Menkiti Group and for the Keller Williams Capital Properties. Kymber led strategy for the MG residential sales team as an award-winning broker, Bowl graduate, Realtors Institute designation. Her leadership of MG Residential has garnered recognition internationally as among the top 25 teams within Keller Williams Realty International, as measured by sales volume, and the team is consistently ranked in the top 1% of realtors nationwide. In 2015, Kymber was recognized by Washington Smart CEO as a Braun Award winner, and in 2018 as a Washington Business Journal 40 Under 40. Kymber is a charter member and chair of the Cpmg Foundation, a joint project of the Menkiti Group and KWCP created to support the housing, education, and youth needs in the DC metro area. Bo, founder and CEO of the Menkiti Group, a real estate service company dedicated to transforming lives, careers, and communities through real estate. The Menkiti Group is focused on strengthening neighborhoods through the strategic development, management, and disposition of real estate in urban markets. Bo also serves as CEO and is the founding partner of Keller Williams Capital Properties, a residential real estate brokerage managed by the Menkiti Group. Most recently, Bo founded Mission Mortgage, a double bottom line regional mortgage lender. Thank you both for being with us today.
Thank
Awesome.
you. I just
And without further ado, we really just want to jump right into Bo and Kymber and their presentation today. We're going to be talking about the path of your business money, the 5 steps taken to get financial freedom, and so much more. We're so honored to have these two amazing folks with us. Without further ado, Bo and Kymber Menkiti.
Great. Well, I'm going to let Kymber kick it off because she always goes first.
It's worked well. It served you well.
Smart man.
Yes. Well, good morning. This is always one of Bo and I's favorite topics to teach about. And it really, our goal today is to walk you a little bit through our personal journey of the wealth building process, but then really to focus on what we've really narrowed into the 7 keys to wealth building. So we're going to dive in, and Bo, I think you're going to share screen and we'll start a little of the presentation. And this is interactive. We're going to have a shared screen up, which I know makes it a little harder for us to see all the boxes, but feel free if you've got comments while one of us is going, we'll be checking out the chat. If you've got a comment, an aha, a question, feel free to drop it in and we'll make it as virtually interactive as we can. And so we're going to start with a little bit of just framework around why wealth matters and why wealth matters right now.
All right, great. Can all of you see my screen?
We got it.
All right. Well, this topic, as Kymber said, is really something that we're passionate about, because it's been a huge part of our lives and our journey over the last now it's really 17 years in real estate for me, and a little less than that for Kymber. Keller Williams has been a tremendous learning space, a tremendous collaboration space for us that has really facilitated being able to harness the power of real estate, both to build wealth, but also to have an impact. And so as we've gone forward in our careers and lives, we've been really passionate about the conversation in the real estate space around wealth. And so I wanted to kind of just share with you kind of why we think this wealth building conversation is so important. I think great way to kick off your wealth building club and the series. There's us. We look a lot better in photos than we do in person, so you can see us.
Speak for yourself.
But we're gonna share with you a little bit about our wealth building journey, And, we think it's always helpful to kind of have a little context. And for us, our lives are full and wild and wonderful. And we're going to share with you, a lot, but oftentimes people interact with us and see us as we are today. And I want to kind of take you back. I want to take you back 17 years because I think it's really important, kind of ground it. So 17 years ago, I had just gotten a real estate license. I was a part-time realtor. I had sold 6 homes. And I had only brokers who take me with this little like satellite Coldwell Banker because the other brokerages said you're a part-time agent. We don't want to have you. And I owned one real estate property, but I wasn't living in it. I was living in a condo with my buddy, sharing a place, and had this one house that I was renting out. It was long before any of these little guys entered the picture. Kymber and I had actually just started dating, and it was before we were married. So that's kind of, I want to kind of put it there because I think we look at it today and people seem like, oh, those guys, they're not really human, or they're not kind of different than us. No, we were probably well behind where you were 17 years ago. But these are our family and some of our awesome little guys. We've got 4 little boys, Braxton, who's 12, Carter, who's 9, Clayton, who's 8, and Cameron, who's 16 months, and busy as can be, running all over the place. So that's kind of a little bit about us, but there's a bigger picture here, and sort of why wealth matters more globally in the United States, to me, really comes down to this map. If you took the geographic landmass of the United States and you divided it up the way that wealth is distributed in this country, 1% of all the population would own this big chunk of America, all the way from sort of the middle of America up and into the Northwest. 9% would sort of own the east of the Mississippi. 30% would own down here in this kind of panhandle. 20% would own just a piece of the state of Texas. And 40% would own this teeny red dot. In fact, in 2016, the Walton family, the Walton siblings, so the heirs to Walmart, had more wealth than 40% of the American population combined. So as we go forward, one of the things that has made us so passionate about this is that wealth has always been this sort of elusive thing that only accrued to a few people. And we have this powerful tool in real estate to kind of democratize and spread wealth amongst a greater number of people to improve their lives and to make impact across different communities. So we live in a country where wealth is very consolidated. And it's consolidated in a very few number of people. And Kymber's going to talk in a second how the recent pandemic has only made that worse and exacerbated this. So let's make it a little more practical. When you think about people in America, the average household income in our country for a family of 4 is $59,000, right? We have $12.73 trillion, that's trillion dollars, in consumer debt in America. 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. What that means is that if they were to miss a paycheck, they no longer can meet their living expenses, right? Most Americans carry credit card debt on an average of 16.14%. 7 out of 10 families don't budget consistently. And for those of you in real estate, you see this last one so live. When you see people in foreclosure struggling with their homes, it's usually the result of a small emergency. So 66% of American families can't handle a $1,000 emergency, whether that's someone getting sick, whether it's a car accident, whatever it is, these small issues of life can throw many families into financial disaster and threaten their stability. So we oftentimes talk about wealth as these shiny objects and cool vacations and all these things we aspire to. Wealth is also about resiliency. It's about stability, and it's about the ability to continue and not be thrown off with things that happen. This is, I think, the social equity group. So it becomes really interesting when you start to think about wealth as it relates to race. The discrepancies get even larger. on average, Black and brown families, white families make 1.5 times the income of Black and brown families, but have 9 to 10 times the wealth. And for those of you guys who dug into some of Richard Rothstein's work on the FHA and the way housing has been driven in America, that big gap. So the gap that incomes, there's a discrepancy in income, but there's a way bigger discrepancy in wealth. And all the research points to that. That is primarily driven by housing. It's primarily driven by our industry and the history of our industry in America. And so we start to think about this, there's all these discrepancies, whether it has to do with just wealth being concentrated in a few people, whether it has to do with race, whether it has to do with the socioeconomic tiering of America, regardless of background, there's a real challenge with wealth in our country. And so I'm going to turn over to Kymber to just talk a little bit about, hey, we're in this time, we're coming out now. I think we're just a little over a year of being in this funky COVID, I call it the Zoom time, because I've been on Zoom ever since we started COVID a year ago. So I'm going to turn it over to her to just talk a little bit about how that bigger picture overlays with the current situation in COVID.
Absolutely. So what you're seeing here is sort of what we would traditionally see in an economic recovery period. And the early predictions, probably not even a year ago, were, like it's going to come down. We're all just going to stay home for 2 or 3 weeks. We're going to see this jolt to our system, our economic system, our businesses, and then it will just slowly start to, you bottom out at the bottom, virus cases would peak, and then you would literally start to see the climb of recovery. And so this is sort of traditionally how we think about economic recovery. And this was in the early predictions, what we were anticipating. Now, here we are a year later, what did we actually see? And this is called this K-shaped recovery. And you've probably heard lots about this, over the last year of this is how it actually played out. And who can tell me, because I want this to also, I'm going to put you guys interacting with us. What does that mean? What happened in a K-shaped recovery? What are you seeing right here? What's happening when we say K-shaped recovery?
I can answer that, I think.
Yes, please.
Okay, so basically, some people are recovering better than others. So if you look at this slide you have up, the folks that earn less per hour, whose wages are lower, have been doing a lot worse than people who earn more money.
You nailed it, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And who in a lot of our communities that became our hotel workers, our restaurant workers, the people who are already at a lower end economically from an income standpoint, and they were the ones that the recovery was painful, we're still seeing it. And yet what we saw, as marked particularly by our housing market that started booming, about 9 months ago, it was the opposite, because people who had professional jobs, who they were actually up. They were, not only did they not go backwards, because now they're not going on vacations, they're not eating out at restaurants, they're saving more. So, and their jobs were stable in many cases. So we started to see this really what we call K-shaped recovery, where the upper end of our wage earners in the country just continued to be, the divide became greater. While those that were making on hourly jobs, you see this, the rates between under $14 an hour, $14 to $20 an hour. And absolutely, Mary Beth is saying, and they have the benefit of home ownership, They have this ability to refinance if in fact they were at the top end of the K professionally, but maybe they had a furlough or they had something where they were not able to work for a period of time.
Benefited from really low interest rates too.
Absolutely, from refining into low interest rates, lowering their housing costs. I mean, we saw that, you see it, because that just shoved into our housing market. People pushing to buy bigger houses, buy second homes, yet on the bottom end of the recovery, everyone looking for, hey, where are we going to pass the next stimulus? Because that $1,500, $1,900 really made a huge difference. So we just saw the recovery of the reality of what we saw in the COVID economic recovery. And why does that matter, Because what we know is that the greatest wealth transfers actually happen during recessions. So here we go, The coronavirus actually created an opportunity for one of the greatest wealth transfers in history. So Bo and I actually, a year ago, we were scheduled to teach this locally for our African American Real Estate AREP, our local association. And we almost paused because we said, is this really the moment in time, in May and June of last year to be talking about wealth building when there is such uncertainty and people are like, there was all these things happening in our country. And yet we said, we have to talk about it. You have to talk about it now more than ever because of this slide right here, that we knew that this is what's creating. And if we're not dialed into it and you're not having the conversation, then you look up, right? And we're on the other side of it and the wealth transfers have already taken place.
Great. So that's kind of background. We wanted to dig in a little bit more practically for all of you into like the wealth building journey. And we only have an hour today, so we're going to go quick through a bunch of stuff. But what we wanted to share with you is we have these 7 keys to wealth building. We're going to really focus only on 3 of them. But there's a framework. So Gary Keller, actually, you can always thank Gary for pushing models. He came to me about 5 years ago and said, I've heard all this stuff. You're teaching all these wealth building classes. Show me your model. And so here's the model that I came up with. It's called the wealth building continuum. So this is the as closest as Bo Menkiti has to a trademarked Bo and Kymber Menkiti trademarked model. And really all it is just a way to look at the way that wealth operates and money operates in our worlds and in our country. And so I want you guys to keep this kind of in the back of your head. We're going to talk about some different elements of the keys to wealth building. I want this to be in the back of your brain. The first is on the left, and let me walk through it and we take a second to talk about it. On the left is the place where you trade time and talent for money. Time and talent for money. And we happen to be in a profession in real estate sales where you're highly rewarded when you trade time and talent for money. It's one of the best places in the world to trade your time and talent for money if you can do it well, right? Very high earners relative to other folks. The middle is where you trade time and talent and money for money. This might be when you buy a business and work to improve that business or invest in your business. It might be, so for a salesperson, it could be, you could be right on the edge of this when you start to hire people and start to try to build your sales business into a business. It could be when you buy a property and you renovate it and you sell it, right? It could also be when you buy a property and you rent it. In all of those scenarios, you're taking your money and then you're placing your time and talent with your money to try to create additional resource. That makes sense? So you got a human asset and a financial asset working together. And then on the right-hand side, at some point you get to a world where if I want to sell a pad site to, I guess you're in New Jersey, so to Wawa, I won't use my 7-Eleven, to Wawa, you want to sell a pad site to Wawa, they're going to build their own building, they're going to manage it, they're going to do everything, but you're going to get a very low return, right? You get a very low return, but you're trading really money for money. You don't have a lot of time or energy in that. If you buy a stock or a bond, you buy a municipal bond, you're not actually putting time into that. You're trading money for money. And one of the key things that is unique is that money can beget money. Money doesn't always require work to create more money. Money in our society can create more money. It's a compounding effect. It can beget its own self. And that's a really powerful thing about money. But here's the thing that doesn't work about what we teach people in America about money. We tell them to go on the left-hand side and to have a job, right? And one of the reasons why all this disproportionate wealth exists in America is we tell people to go have a job. And then we tell them to get a 401k or to hire a financial manager all the way on the right-hand side. So we operate all the way on the left and all the way on the right. And the reality is, if you don't start with a lot of money, all the way on the right can maybe build and be safe and maybe create you a little bit of a retirement, but doesn't fundamentally change the wealth in your family line. And let me talk to you a little bit more about why that is. If you think about a high-performing individual salesperson, you might be able to operate on a 60% margin of your GCI. You know, your top small teams, maybe at 40%. Your really big teams, maybe they're at like 25%. So if you thought about the margin in the create space, into the beginning of that sort of middle space, it's very high. Just so you guys get a sense, like in the world, like a grocery store has like a 2% margin. A brokerage has like a 2% margin, right? Casinos, where they get to make their own margins, have a 36% margin. So as a real estate business owner, you have a better margin than a casino, right? Which is a manipulated margin because they just decide to pay you when they want to, right? So that's a very interesting thing that we don't always appreciate. Yet if you go into like flipping a house, most really people who are really good at flipping a house, they might make a 20% return on cost or a 20% margin, right? If you were to go, and think about investing in a rental property, you'd be really excited to get a 10% cash on cash return in a rental property, right? A stabilized rental property. You go into a commercial property, it might be a 7%, a 6% return. You buy a municipal bond, you're going to get a 4 or 5% return. If you cost adjust after fees and inflation, your stuff you have in the markets and things you're doing financially usually comes out in the high single digits, right? Somewhere around in between 5 and 7 or 8%. So the reality is that if you start out having a job and you take all your money, you put it all the way on the right-hand side, that can actually build up a little bit because the compounding effect is strong, especially if you start early, but it's never going to fundamentally change the wealth trajectory. Wealth trajectory gets changed in the middle. It gets changed in your ability to operate in how well you can create and then how well you can multiply. And then you need to protect and grow your money over time so you don't lose it. So let me stop there for a second and just see if anyone has any questions about this framework as a framework, because it's something that we want to leave with you guys as we go through our story. Any questions about that?
Bo, can you just expound a little bit on multiply, or maybe give some examples of how we could potentially multiply?
Yeah, I've always loved this idea that everything's a continuum, because I felt like people always talked about, I've got active income, I have passive income. In KW, you got lots of people talking about, I got all these streams of income. And it kind of annoyed me because something's not ever really 100% passive. There are things that are closer to that, and there are things that are more of that. And so to me, there were shades of gray, right? And so if you start in the beginning of multiply, the beginning in my mind, right on that edge, if you saw that first edge between create and multiply, is when you start to invest in your business. When you spend money to hire somebody or to buy resources or tools for your business, you're starting to multiply because you're putting your money behind your time and energy, thereby using your money as leverage to create something that will move it forward, right? The lowest level in my mind of multiply is investing in a business that you operate, okay? You can move across that and you get into places where something that is more focused on money and less on your time and energy. Buying a single family home, renovating it and flipping it, right, is still more, it requires money. It requires a good amount of money, but it also requires a lot of your time, energy, and talent. And it takes more effort than, let's say, buying a property and just renting it. But let's say you manage it, you had to find it, that actually still takes time and energy. So basically, as you move from left to right, you're depending more heavily on money and less on your time and talent. When you get to like the edge of multiply to protect and grow, you're talking about like triple net leased commercial properties where you're still buying a property, you got to find it, you got to finance it, you got to buy it, but you're taking less responsibility. First, you'd be managing it. Then there's ones where you don't have to manage it and the tenant does most of the management, right? Then you could move further into the protect and grow. You might lease land to somebody. You could do a ground lease. You might invest in the stock market and somebody else manages it, or you're investing in another company. So as you get further to the right, these become much more passive ways of investing. We're going to talk a little bit later that you always have an opportunity when you're going to invest to own or to lend. And so, a bond is actually like lending money to the government. A stock is owning a piece of a company that you don't operate. So we're going to see that those things become options, but they're passive over to the side because we're not operating. Does that make sense of sort of the gradations as you move across? Specifically for people in real estate, though, people always ask me, okay, that's real complicated. How can I make that real simple as a real estate agent? To me, there's 3 things that are available to everybody on this call that we all should be doing. I'll go over them, and this is kind of outside the agenda, but worth saying.
worth noting?
Number one, we have a sales business. It's an amazing way to create. So we should get really good at that because it's one of the best opportunities to create dollars. And if we start not having any dollars, the first step in wealth building is to create money, right? The next step is we have this amazing gift of profit share, right? A profit share, right? Profit share is an amazing way to participate in multiply with none of the risks. So normally if you want to play in multiply, you got to put out money to own a business. You got to take downside risk if the market changes. You got to sign a lease and a guarantee. And in KW, we give people profit share, which says basically you got ownership in the company and all you have to do is make a referral. It's like we're cheating. We're allowing you to trade time and talent for something that would normally take time and talent and money. So we're actually allowing you to cheat and move from 1 to 2 without having to put up any money, right? So everybody here should have profit share. People don't get excited about it because we're so used to the create space where the dollars are big that we never focus on the small, steady streams of money that actually create wealth. And we're going to talk about that because we have the wrong time perspective. Real estate agents, we think in 90 days. What if you thought in 10 years? How would you think about that different, right? The last piece is we have great businesses that create cash, but most people don't have assets. And so my suggestion for every real estate person is you should at least buy a residential rental property. And it might not, if it breaks even, you're good because it's creating an asset over time that will build up. And I think folks in real estate, when I talk to real estate agents, most people are like, well, I want to flip houses. Why? Because it's shorter term money. But the way it's taxed, the way it operates, it's not a great wealth builder. Flipping houses is really an income creator, right? Owning a property over time is how you build wealth in real estate. And so I think those are the three things: run a great sales business, participate in profit share, and buy something and hold it, even if it's a single family house. So that's my sort of thought. I will get back to the presentation. Any questions on that?
Hey, Bo, can you talk to how, as real estate professionals, we have a different type of depreciation we could take when it comes to owning investment properties? I know that my accountant's talked about it over the years because it's our business. We could benefit from depreciation a little bit differently than others can. Maybe an accounting question, but I'm curious.
Yeah, no, it's a great thing. So we are considered, real estate professionals. So you are designated as a real estate professional, right? And what that means is that income and you can treat that, you can offset your active income in real estate sales with the depreciation or losses that you have from owning a real estate asset. And that's a huge advantage we have as real estate agents, because somebody else who's not in the real estate business, when they have a loss or they get depreciation, it's considered passive, and they can only use that depreciation to offset passive gains, which they would get from the stock market or something. But your main income can be offset by the depreciation stuff that comes from real estate. So that's an advanced tax question. But what I think Michael's getting at here is there's tremendous tax advantages that accrue to people when you hold real estate over time.
And that's what you said. Even if you break even, it still could be a huge benefit for you when you bring some of those other accounting principles into play. So thanks, Bo. Appreciate that.
So let me, sorry, I went on a little bit of a bunny trail, but I wanted to kind of do that. So for us, there was this guiding principle that drove us, which was we are committed to our mission of transforming lives, careers, and communities through real estate. When Kymber and I got together and started to build the business, we sat down with the early team. We said, what do we want to be about? What do we want to stand for? Well, we came up with this idea that we want to stand for being a transformative force in people's lives, careers, and the communities we touch, using real estate as the medium and the vehicle. And so Kymber's going to walk you through. I thought it's always helpful. People always wonder, back this question of, well, okay, bro, you said you were a part-time real estate agent, when you started in 2004. How did that go? So Kymber's going to walk us through the progression of our lives and business.
Awesome. And, I'm going to give the disclaimer that, this is normally like a 2+ hour presentation for us. So we're going to zip to leave time for questions and focus on the 7 keys. So you're going to see us kind of move quickly, and then maybe we'll share out with you guys the next time we're doing this as the longer, fuller version, so that you'll kind of get all the meat of it. So we started with the sales team. His story, as Bo mentioned, he was a part-time real estate agent working, running a nonprofit, gets his real estate license during a little 2-week lull and starts selling a bunch of houses. right from the beginning realizes that that is going to be best as a team, and so adds an admin and a buyer agent, and then continues to grow out the team. The same time that that's happening, first 2 years in the business, he has the 30 under 30, like right in year 2, and then decides, hey, it's time there's an opportunity here to launch a brokerage. Keller Williams didn't exist in Washington, D.C. at the time. So we go off on this journey to launch the first Keller Williams office, which you'll see in a second. So that also allowed me to lead, right? To come in. I also came in as a part-time agent and picked up where Bo had really built the team to, and continued to grow it out. Added a phenomenal buyer agent team with Martin Weldon and Delonte Moore, and then really started to build out the rest of our team over the next 10 years. Actually, Bo, let's see. Oh, there we go. There we go. So at the same time, right at the beginning, and as Bo mentioned, as you think about that create and multiply, right from the start, we went into multiply. And multiply looked like, for us, really home building. And that we say home building today, but at the time that was really just one house, right? Taking one house. I was still working full time, so we still had the benefit of being able to leverage that income, right? Of being able to have an income, a W-2 income to leverage for investments. So that was the start of our now home building business, which today continues to rehab and invest in properties and sell them back out. That launched into condos, single family townhomes, and that today is still a major channel of our business and now asset development. Profit share, right from the beginning, we were really looking at how could we leverage profit share. Certainly not in the beginning intentionally, but we started to see that, right? We started, as Bo's saying, not at all. We started to really see the benefit of what that was doing. That was
I always talk about it real quick. Kymber goes fast. I always slow down.
I know.
I want to say one thing, because I hated profit share. When I started Keller Williams, I hated profit share. I was like, I'm a serious business person. This profit share thing's a joke, right? And I didn't pay nearly enough attention to it until I started to really understand how profit share worked. That profit share really was not some revenue thing, multi-level marketing BS. It was a participation in the core profit of a business that allowed me to basically have equity ownership in the business. And if you think about it, every Keller Williams Market Center owner agrees to basically have a 48, 49% partner that is the real estate agents. And where else can you get equity for free? And you're basically getting equity for free. And so we started to see the compounding nature of it. And although if you think about it as what you'd have to do to get that type of cash flow from something else, and I'll let Kymber tell a story of when it became real for her, because I think that's really powerful for you guys. So for us, profit share became really real when we started to see it actually equal an amount of money that could have a real impact on our lives. And so maybe you could tell that story and just go for it.
Yeah, I mean, so profit share, that's a great question. That was probably 5 or 6 years ago. My great-grandmother, who is amazing and 106 years old and still living, and was about probably 98 at the time, 96, 90, yeah, anyway. She was transitioning for the first time out of this home that she had raised all of her children in, was sort of an icon of our family in Newport News, Virginia. And so we were transitioning her into an assisted living facility. And it was really hard for my family to imagine that they were gonna have to sell this house. That was it was the place where, right, you had all your holidays. Everyone really spent a lot of time and had a lot of memories connected to it. And so my grandmother, who was still living at the time, called me and was like just devastated that they were going to have to sell this house. And so I asked, as a real estate agent, right, I'm asking all sorts of questions. Well, what's it on the market for? Like, what's going on? Like, how was they had an off-market deal that had fallen through. And so it turned out that the price that the offer that had fallen through was the exact same price, right around within like $1,000 of what our profit share had come in for that year. And so I looked at Bo and I said, this could be the house that profit share brought. And we gotta catch him. Beauties of Zoom mute. And so it was that. So, Bo and I were able to that Christmas buy this house, keep the house in our family. It's still in our family today, and have that be literally that year the house that profit share brought. So it's sort of it definitely became alive for me to actually see the impact. And we hear those stories all over, right? Being able to see what profit share does. People use it to pay for like down payments on houses and cars and college funds. And I think putting it aside and really seeing what it can do and then how you can leverage it gives it, I think, a little bit more reality of the impact. Awesome. All right. So after that, we continue to build up profit share, and then we started to move right into that protect and grow. When you think about portfolio, sometimes the single family homes are sexier, right? We look at the flips and coming in and renovating and selling something. The reality of like where we, as Bo mentioned, those real core assets that are really driving long-term wealth are happening often in your portfolio and those assets that you're holding and that are creating either cash flow or just payment of debt. And so you saw in our world that started to look like a larger portfolio that has grown significantly today. We added a staging business. We added a property management business. And you actually see those things go away. And I think for us, right, we got into a lot of different business lines as we started to look at different things that touched the real estate transaction and realized we actually weren't great at all of them. And they were taking away our focus to go figure out how to operate another ancillary business. So we had partners in both of those businesses and we sold those ventures back to them and they still operate today. And we are now just clients and no longer have an ownership interest in them. So as we mentioned, with the start of the sales team about 2 years in, we launched the first Keller Williams, the first one being in Washington, D.C. It's still our flagship market center. We then went out to Virginia and opened a Fairfax location and then continued to grow them. We added Bethesda, Rockville, Stafford, and upper Northwest D.C. So to bring us to a total of 6 market centers today. And then 3 years ago, we had an opportunity to get involved in the Maryland, D.C. region. I think this is, if you've seen the Keller Williams opportunity map, you're going to see a lot of these things overlap. And so that's also a great way to think about as you're looking at the opportunity map and where do you want your world to go in our platform that provides a lot of different opportunities based on your interest. And so for me, my leadership journey sort of took a turn when I had the opportunity to step into the regional director role for Maryland and DC. We then continued to build out core service, title, insurance, mortgage, as you heard at the beginning of this. And so those evolved from just partnerships that we had in with different partners in the industry to actually joint ventures that we launched into businesses that service our platform of existing agents and beyond. And then our development business, this is where Bo's heart is, I believe. So being able to really see that transformation when you think of our mission of transforming lives, careers, communities through real estate, we really see a lot of that transformation in communities in our development space. We have the opportunity to do projects in Maryland, DC, Virginia, and in Massachusetts. And then the other side of us is how do you give back on a broader scale for paid and non-paid boards? And so this is some of the boards and nonprofits that we both have had an opportunity to be involved in.
Kymber, I have a question. What does that look like when you went from the portfolio to the market center ownership? What does that process look like? How did that go about? Who did you talk to? Like, what were your intentions at that point? And how did you
I love it. And those were not actually, so they look sequential in the way we have it laid out, but a lot of those are happening at the same time, overlapping. So we actually launched into Keller Williams before we really were building out. I mean, we had some portfolio assets, but those have really accelerated. So if you think about our interest, and again, when we got in, there was no Keller Williams in Washington, D.C. at all. So we didn't have anybody to have a conversation with about opportunities locally. And so Bo actually met somebody, was getting ready to open an extension of a Coldwell Banker office and was on a trip, and a Keller Williams agent who benefits greatly from that one conversation at a bar in Chicago is an Atlanta agent, Joanne Curtin. And so she taps Bo and says, I overheard you talking about real estate. You should, have you ever heard of this company called Keller Williams? And that sort of started our Keller Williams journey. But I think when you think about the opportunity map, if you're like, hey, I'm interested in understanding investments, understanding markets and our leadership, I think having that conversation with your OP, I know Michael's on, having that conversation with Michael, understanding, hey, am I interested as an investor? Am I interested as a OP, as a team leader? Like there is, of 800 offices, I don't know how many vacancies you have in your region, Michael, but I know in mine, I've got 20% vacancies in the team leader role. That pathway into understanding leadership, understanding what's happening at the market center, the operations, the economics, is definitely a gateway role for a lot of opportunities in the company.
And if I can comment on that, Kymber, two things. Number one, there's even a bigger opportunity in leadership than that, because there's some OPs that have team leaders in roles that aren't succeeding at a high level. They don't have a replacement, so they leave them in play. So going the leadership path is the first step. And our region is relatively grown out, but there's opportunities for ownership of market centers. There's opportunities for indie MAO offices where you can be a branch partner and open up your own location and share in the revenue. So there's lots of other ways to get involved. So feel free to talk to your leadership, set up a call, leadership and me, and we'll find some creative ways to get you in equity position somehow.
Great.
Great question.
So let's hold on a second. We're back. I don't mind. So I think that kind of. Oh, you want to talk about the foundation real quick? Just real quick.
Absolutely. So one of the things for us, that started really early on when we were just the idea of Market Center, Bo and that original core group said, hey, we're going to set aside in our market, all the big brokers were charging these really massive transaction fees where all of that money just went back to the brokers. And so we said, hey, there's an opportunity here to put our commitment to the community front and center. And so our administrative fee has a portion of it that was set aside for our community give back initiatives. And after about 8-9 years, we looked up and that was a significant pot of money. And so we launched at our 10-year anniversary, the Cpmg Foundation, the Capital Properties Menkiti Group Foundation. And that organization really gives back. It's sort of our leading tip of the sphere to be able to go in and support communities, organizations in the communities that we serve where our market centers are. And it's actually in the process of renovating a space this year to be able to have its own physical location and to launch a training and education center in Southeast, which is one of the most impoverished, lower income parts of our city. And so we're excited to be able to have this idea of impact and see that over the last 15 years really build out into something pretty powerful.
Thanks, Kymber. So in the interest of time, we're going to just hit a couple of highlights. There's one exercise we want to do with you guys because I think it kind of grounds the process as you guys kind of personalize your own personal wealth building journey. And then we're just going to touch on 3 of the 7 keys to wealth. You can come back some other time and take a full wealth building class with us. We'd love to have you, and we can go in more depth. But these are the 7 keys to wealth building that we talk about. Know your purpose, adopt a wealth mindset, remargin your life, adjust your time perspective, take action now. There's opportunity all around you, and who you surround yourself with matters. We're going to touch on 3 of those ones, and we're going to start with know your purpose. We'll talk a little about remargin your life and adjust your time perspective. And then we're going to kind of just run through the rest of this, and we can take some questions at the end. So if something pops into your head, just throw it in the chat so we don't lose it and we can make sure we get to it. So it starts with know your purpose. And this is kind of a little interactive thing. And it is gonna, Kymber, you're gonna have to read out some of the stuff in the chat because I can't see the chat based on the way I'm doing the presentation. So the first question we have, I want everyone to get out a piece of paper. You've all got a piece of paper in front of you or your cell phone or something. I want you to answer this question. I'm gonna take 20 seconds and I want you to write down your answer to this question. How much money would you need to have to consider yourself wealthy? How much money would you need to have to consider yourself wealthy? When you have that, I'd like you to type it in the chat. However you thought of it, however it comes to you. I know it's not culturally appropriate sometimes to talk about money, but we're going to talk about money today because that's the key being able to do this. So if you can just throw in the chat, how much money would you need to have to consider yourself wealthy?
10 million, 10 to 15 million. Are you seeing in the chat about billion, 14 million? It's all sorts of numbers popping in.
Okay. So Angelo, you said 1 million. Can you let us know? Can you either come off mute for a second or type into the chat why you chose that number? Why did you choose that number? Someone, Diallo, you picked 10 to 15 million. Why did you choose that number?
Well, when I was growing up, we used to think that 1 million was a big number, but I've been on the planet a long time and inflation takes its toll. I should also mention that, that income really needs to be passive, right? Because if I have to work for it, at a certain point, am I really wealthy?
So how do you think about that? So that income is coming in how to you?
Well, I don't know, right? But I would think portfolio income, passive income, from various investments.
So that's 10 million in income or 10 million in assets?
No, in income.
In income. Okay, great.
Yeah.
And what does that, why is 10 million in income important to you?
Well, I mean, the question was what would you, what would it have to look like for you to consider yourself wealthy? Well, to me, that kind of passive income creates lots of opportunities. I feel like, there's not much that I couldn't do, right? And I don't have to be, Bill Gates or Elon Musk, right? To be wealthy. So I just think it creates opportunities and a lot of, you don't have to worry about things. You don't have to worry about, hey, if mom needs to go into an assisted living facility, how can you pay for it?
So I heard two things. Yeah, I heard opportunities, and you don't have to worry about needs for your family or other people that do. Can you guys quickly answer this question? Why'd you pick that number? So we heard from Diala, I think Mary Beth put that in the chat. Can you throw in the chat why you picked the number you picked? What it was that drove you to pick that number?
Oh, shit.
I heard someone say it's hard to find a number, right? Generational wealth allows you to survive and help others, right? Create a family legacy, get out of debt and support my family. That's an I'm out number. Then he wants to go off the planet and just chill. And that's the number which he's going to get off the planet. Someone says that's just a number that popped into my head. I love that. That's some good honesty. Ability to live free and help others, right? Enough to make investment moves to grow and invest more. Create leverage and long-term financial momentum. Support my great-great-grandkids, right? I can buy a few houses, right? Allows for a good life and a way to give back. Allows my foundation to run efficiently. Provides security, right? So these are some of the things of the why people chose the numbers that they chose, okay? And normally we'd spend a long time on this, but we don't have that much time. So the next question, which I'm gonna ask you to you guys have been great in the chat. Let's keep using the chat. What's your definition of a financially wealthy person? So it's some quick definitions of a financially wealthy person. What's your definition of a financially wealthy person? Uses debt to build wealth. People around them are wealthy as well. Your money makes money. You can do what you want, when you want, with who you want. You're working because you want to, not because you have to. You got time and freedom. Your unearned income exceeds your lifestyle expenses. Freedom to do what they want, when they want. Passive income, debt-free, has no limitations. Someone that can afford the lifestyle they want. They're financially independent. They can give back. Kymber, you can help me here and keep reading them while I go back to the screen.
Absolutely. Creating a better economic future for your family. What else we got? Income is mostly passive and taxed at the lowest brackets. I like that.
So something that was really powerful for me was a conversation from Gary Keller that we had, this is probably 10 years ago, and it really stuck with me. And the word that hit me was purpose. Gary Keller said, I believe that financially wealthy people are those who have enough money coming in without having to work to finance their purpose in life. I believe that financially wealthy people are those who have enough money coming in without having to work to finance their purpose in life. So this got me thinking, wow, what's my purpose? And you heard a little bit of that in people's things. Those numbers weren't, some were random because we don't really know what's the right number, but most were attached to a purpose. We picked the number because we thought it represented something. Security, freedom, opportunity, give back. So ultimately, financial wealth is having enough money coming in without having to work to finance your purpose in life. St. Augustine said, do you wish to be great? Then begin by being. Do you desire to construct a vast and lofty fabric? Think first about the foundations of humility. The higher your structure is to be, the deeper must be its foundation. And if you think about it, you know, you guys, New York, New Jersey, you build a skyscraper, you go down, you dig down, you build a foundation to hold that structure. The higher your structure is to be, the deeper must be your foundation. So here, my question to you is, what's your purpose? What's your purpose? When people talk about wealth, they want to talk about tactics and talk about how, but in my mind, wealth building starts with knowing what your purpose is in life. If the definition of a financially wealthy person is to have enough money coming in without having to work to finance their purpose in life, you don't know what your target is until you know what your purpose is. So what's your purpose?
Like, yeah, let that sit, right? Like, that's a place where I think there's an opportunity, whether it's through journaling, thinking about, we hear this a lot, even if folks have done Quantum Leap or you've had young people go through QL, and it's like, well, what is my purpose? How do I know what my purpose is? And I think that's a question that evolves, right? In your life, what's important to you? What are you passionate about? What do you wake up excited about? What do you want your legacy to be? Somebody asked Bo yesterday, right? If somebody runs into one of your children, one of your nieces, nephews, somebody that you are responsible for in the next 30, 40 years that you used to work with, right? What do you want them to say about you? What do you want them to say about you? I think that's a powerful question to ask as you start to explore this for yourself. I think this idea of tying what you need and wealth to what you actually want, what purpose and legacy is a critical component of the wealth building process. All right, so we're going to get a little bit more into the how this actually happens. And this is one I feel like Bill always makes me talk about it because it's the place where I probably struggle the most, in full disclosure, is the remargin your life. So one of the things that we did, you know, Bo and I were in our 20s when we launched the first Keller Williams office, and we had both been working in a nonprofit. And so you can imagine, like, right, in the early 2000s, what the salary might look like in a nonprofit. And so we actually intentionally, maybe more for Bo than for me, kept our salaries the same when we launched the business. And we did that for 7 years of the business, kept our salaries the same as what we were making in the nonprofit world, because we already had a lifestyle that could support and could exist on those two incomes. And then that allowed everything that we did to push back into the business. So that was sort of this remargin, but that's easier when you're in your 20s, perhaps, than maybe where you are today, if there's lots of expenses that you have in your life. And so this is a quote by W. Clement Stone: a part of all you earn is yours to keep. And if you cannot save money, the seeds of greatness are not in you. It's a harsh quote, right? And yet there's a lot of truth in this process because it's a gradually then suddenly, and this piece of being able to have that, to have that ability to hold back, right? To be able to create that gap. So here it is, right? This is like our big finale, or at least midpoint of the secret of wealth. So what is that? The secret of wealth: spend less than you make and invest the difference wisely. Spend less than you make and invest the difference wisely. It's that gap, right? No matter what that gap is, you see it here, is expenses, income, the savings is that delta. And often what happens, especially in our business, as we are more successful, we remargin our life to that success. We buy a bigger house, we go get a nicer car, we join a club, like we do these things that actually just eat up and then intensify the amount of pressure to continue to deliver that result. Right now you're on a wheel and you can't get off the wheel because you've created and right, your net worth is actually, you know, a negative net worth, right? Because you're spending more perhaps than is coming in. And so this is it: spend less, earn more, and invest the difference, even if in the beginning that difference is really small. So start saving, accelerate your savings over time, and then you move that into multiply. And that's what Bo said at the beginning, right? Money begets money.
So next one is about adjusting your time perspective. Okay, keep going.
No, jump, you're good.
I was gonna say, like, so adjusting your time perspective becomes the next one. And you know, Bill Gates said that most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10 years. And if you think about that, if you're like me, every day you make a task list and you don't get through your task list. And I'm always frustrated. I always think I can do more in a day than I actually can do. I'm the king of thinking I can do more in a day than I actually can do. But when you talk to people about where they want to be in 5 years, I think Dana was talking about this on a CV class we were on yesterday, where they want to be in 5 years. Most people don't have a very strong estimation of where they want to be in 5 years or 10 years. So there is this question of how do we manage the short game versus the long game? We have to play the short game every day. We got to pay our bills. We got to bring income in. And so sometimes we get so obsessed with playing the short game, we don't play the long game at all. I think in the real estate sales industry, we are very guilty of playing the short game and forgetting about the long game. The opposite is also true. If you just play the long game, you can die in the short game, right? Without having ability to survive to get to the long game. So the key to money is to harnessing the power of gradually then suddenly. This idea of geometric versus linear. And because money compounds, the key thing here is that money moves in a geometric fashion, not in a linear fashion. And so what does that mean? What does that mean? There's this great quote, right? This great quote in Ernest Hemingway's The Sun Also Rises. Two guys are sitting at the bar and he asks the guy, how did you go bankrupt? And the guy says, gradually, then suddenly. And the reality is that life works gradually, then suddenly. We succeed or fail gradually, then suddenly, right? Our relationships expound gradually, then suddenly. So most of us think success is like this. Wealth is like this. I put in more effort, I do more work, I get more. We are trained in this way. We want immediate gratification, and we expect that if we put in more, we should get more. If I do more work, I should sell more houses, I should make more commissions, I should make more money. This is our world. And this is the expectation of most people, right? The fact is, money doesn't work like this. And quite frankly, success in life doesn't work like this. It works more like this. It's much more geometric. It's exponential. It's gradually, then suddenly. Well, what's the problem with gradually, then suddenly? In my mind, I always talk about the problem with gradually and suddenly is this point right here. It's the point where you've put in the most effort, the most time, and you've gotten the least return. And many people give up right in that point. I call that point the can't point, where people say, I can't go on, can't take this anymore, I can't do it anymore. That point happened for Kymber and I somewhere around 2010.
Yeah.
Right? We were 6, 7 years in the business. We had our first son. He's 1 year old. I was going crazy trying to open the market center, open a second market center, working around the clock. Came home and Kymber, who's much more thoughtful and about things than I am, said, what the hell are you doing? Like, you should just go get a job. Like, you're working around the clock. We're still making this little bit of money. Like, you got all these skills. Like you got a son to think about. What are we doing? Or what are we doing? We're working, and we're not getting anything out of it. And we came very close in that moment from deciding, hey, we'd go in a different direction. That was our can't point. And just to show you how this works in real life, that's the revenue of our company. So in 2009, we had our can't point, first can't point. All right. In the next 2 years, the company made twice as much money as it had in the 6 years before. In the next 2 years, it made 4 times as much money as it made in the 8 years before that. The growth was gradually, then suddenly. And our lives mirrored those can't points. And some of those can't points happen again. I'd say we're probably in one of them again. We've been at this like $100 million in revenue for a little while, and we're experiencing that can't point. You got to break through and get to the other side. So this idea of gradually then suddenly is a huge thing. And sometimes our mindset is still linear. And so we do not find things attractive that grow gradually then suddenly. And we choose to spend our time on things that give us immediate reward, playing only the short game and losing the long game. So a couple of just concepts that how that plays out in building your net worth through assets. This is actually, I want to give appropriate attribution. This is a conversation I had with Ben Kinney. And he came up with this. He drew this on a piece of paper and he's used it in a lot of his wealth building things. So it came from a breakfast that Menkiti and I were having talking about wealth. So you think about it on the left-hand side, most people have a good amount of income and they have very few assets and very little cash flow coming from those assets. And Ben's concept is, hey, you actually want to flip that triangle on its head. You want your earned income to be the smallest part of your overall world. You want to have a lot of assets that deliver cash flow in excess of your income. So your income becomes your smallest piece, not your largest piece, right? And this is, again, that progression from left to right, right? Time and talent for money. I'm starting to build assets. All of a sudden, my assets produce cash flow. All of a sudden, the money from the cash flow from my assets outstrips my income. And then I'm on my way to that exercise.
Yep. And you think about like a Warren Buffett where people are like, how does he pay so little? And like, it's because the income, right? Versus the assets. So you think about how you flip that and really begin to build the long-term assets. Because a lot of you said, when you talked about the, how do you define wealthy? It was about passive. And the
I think one last thing that's interesting
channel.
about, one thing that's really interesting about Warren Buffett, just to drive this point home, I forget the age, but it's like 60. 90% of Warren Buffett's wealth was created after he was 60.
Yeah, you're right.
He was not, he's been doing it for a long time. He started way before that. So his wealth grew exponentially in the later years.
Yeah, it's like gradually then suddenly, for sure.
So I'm going to skip over this, Kymber, because I think it's too much.
And you can find this in Hold. This is right out of Gary Keller. You've got all this stuff if you've got MREI, Hold.
And this is
right?
the path of money, but it does the same thing that the Continuum does. It says, hey, there's human capital and there's money capital. Both of those things can create cash flow. I've got a set of options of what I can do with that money, one of which is to invest. When I invest, I have two options. I can lend or I can own. And I can do that actively or passively. If I do it passively, it's like lending is money markets, CDs, bonds, T-bills. Owning is stocks, REITs, and mutual funds. Somebody else controls it. It's passive. It's 100% passive. That's money for money. On the active side, you could be a hard money lender. You can do owner financing. You can do private lending. You can also own a business. You can own real estate. In those cases, you control it. You drive it. It's active, not passive, but there's variations of active and passive within that, which is what the Continuum gets at. At the end of the day, those investments produce capital. That capital comes back up to the top. So you're always earning capital from your investments and from the human exercise of your time and talent for money. So you keep doing the time and talent for money, you get money, your assets start to produce money, and that ratio starts to change over time. So that's really what this is all about. It's what the wealth building perspective is all about. You're going to move from the left of this chart to the right of this chart by slowly increasing the amount of money that comes from your active investments and your passive investments. And what the Continuum does is move from the most active investments to the most passive investments as you move from the early stage of multiply to the far right of that graph in protect and grow. I'm going to skip this, Kymber.
Yeah.
The last piece is this question about opportunity. And Keller Williams is a company of opportunity. We throw around the word opportunity all the time. And there's something I always say about opportunity. Opportunity has to be qualified. Opportunity must be qualified. And I mean that in two senses of the word. One, you need to qualify your opportunity. People say, I want to own a market center. Well, there's market centers in Keller Williams. If you own, you'll make over $1 million a year. There are market centers that if you own, you'll have to write a check of hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for the privilege of owning that market center. All opportunities are not the same. And too many people do not spend enough time figuring out the difference between the opportunities that they pursue. They pursue a position, they pursue a title, and they don't actually understand what that opportunity is.
Can you tell who's passionate about this topic?
I'm really passionate about it because I think Keller Williams misuses the word opportunity. The second thing is you have to be qualified for the opportunity. You can't just say, hey, I want an opportunity. You haven't done the work to be prepared for that opportunity, right? So we must qualify the opportunities we seek, and we must be qualified for the opportunities we would like. And every day people come to me and say, I want opportunity, I want opportunity, I want opportunity. It usually lacks, right, a perspective about qualification. Is the opportunity you're seeking any good? And are you prepared and qualified for the opportunity you're seeking? So just a thought around opportunity. Thomas Edison said, Napoleon Hill said, your big opportunity might be right where you are right now. We oftentimes, the ceiling of achievement, E to P, people always go looking for their opportunity somewhere else. And Thomas Edison said, opportunity is missed by most people because it's dressed in overalls and looks like work. Not a shiny, glittery promise of, passive income through your influence. Our industry is ripe with snake oil salesmen selling you, sort of ideas that are based on selling opportunity that is not qualified. You could tell I get a
little fired up.
But in front of you, you've got all these opportunities. You're in real estate. You guys are successful real estate folks. So you got an opportunity to invest in yourself through education, through learning, through advancing your skills, so that you have more talent, right? You can get efficient with your time, and therefore you can trade. Your time and talent becomes more valuable. You can invest in your business, in your team. You can grow your sales business. You can invest in other people. People are some of the best investments, but some of the most frustrating investments that you can possibly do. You have the opportunity we talked about in profit share. You've got a free equity opportunity sitting right in front of you. You guys know the single family markets in the places you work. And I always hear folks get really excited, like, hey, I've got an investor who's going to buy this property. Well, if it's a good investment, why aren't you buying? Right? In the stock market, I just merged this big bank. They had all these confidentiality requirements and stuff. We couldn't trade the stock. So in business, in publicly traded companies, if you act on insider information, it's illegal. You go to jail. In real estate, you have all the inside information, right? You have all the inside. You know exactly where people want to buy, where people is more attractive, where things are coming. You trade in inside information, and it's actually encouraged for you to use it, right? At some point, when you have more resources, commercial investment properties be interesting. Investing in the real estate brokerages and the things that are related to them become opportunities as you grow. And then finally, who you surround yourself with matters. We talked a lot about your 5 wealth determiners. This was an old Gary Keller thing, your 5 wealth determiners. So, YWD is your wealth determiner, and WYDWF is who you determine wealth for, okay? The thought process on this is that people always think about their wealth determiners. When people talk about this, they say, who are going to be my wealth determiners? And this idea that they're going to somehow sit back and sip a pina colada with a pineapple in it, and they're going to have these wealth determiners out there just working for them. And I would suggest that the first question you should ask yourself is not who are your wealth determiners, but who is it that you determine wealth for? And the answer is all of you determine wealth for somebody. I was doing the math for someone the other day. Our market centers represent 2% of Gary Keller's net worth, right? They produce royalty, 2% of the royalty, right?
Yeah, not Gary.
The KW's net worth, right?
Yeah.
So the regions we own represent 12% of the income of Keller Williams. So we determine wealth for Keller Williams and the owners of Keller Williams, right? So why are we in that relationship? Is Bo unable to start a business on his own? Right? What is the reason why we choose to be part of that platform? When you start to understand why the relationship you have with people you determine wealth for, you start to understand the dynamics that you would need to have in play with other people, because people become your wealth determiners when you become a path to wealth for them. So when you start to think about who you determine wealth for, you can apply those concepts to the people that would be your wealth determiners. And one of the most amazing things about this company has been the people that you have the opportunity to surround yourself with. So who you surround yourself with truly matters as you go through this exercise. So I think we should stop there, Kymber, and kind of open it up for some questions as we've got about 15 minutes left, and then we have something to close with. So that was fast. That's as fast as I can talk. Kymber's much better at talking fast than I am.
So on the wealth determiners, how do we apply it?
I think that all too often, people enter relationships asking the question, what's the relationship gonna do for me? That's pretty much the frame in which people, every time we interview real estate agents all the time, they come to us and they go, well, what are you gonna do for me? We got people that wanna be in our company. Well, what's it gonna do for me? And they haven't spent any time thinking about what they would contribute to the company, what they would contribute. And so I recently started doing something, I did something with the candidates the other day. I made them write a memo. They interviewed, I said, write me a memo that tells me how you're gonna add value in the organization. And the reality is oftentimes people don't think that they can add value. This happens with new agents all the time. They say, I want a mentor because I gotta learn. And they forget that that mega agent who they want to mentor them actually has like a lot of weaknesses and needs. They might need somebody to sit their open house. They might not know how to drop their lock boxes off. So my success early on was how I got good in real estate was I partnered with this guy who had all the listings on Capitol Hill. He dominated. He was kind of ornery. He was old. He hated doing open houses. People didn't really like him. They just listed their house with him because he controlled the entire market. And so I said, I will take all your open houses off your hands. All the new agents were like, I'll do one when I have time, when I can get to it. I said, nope, I'm going to give you the all-in-one solution. I will handle all your open houses. And this guy had like 17, active listings on one neighborhood. And so I figured out a way, and I would do an open house on Saturday morning, on Saturday afternoon, and on Saturday evening. I do one on Thursday night. I do 4 on Sunday. And all of a sudden, Menkiti, who had only sold like one house, everybody wanted to buy a house in Capitol Hill, walked into a house and I was there. And all of a sudden, we became one of the top agents there. And Bob Williams was his name. He was totally happy because he could go to the Eastern Shore and he never had to worry about his open houses. So ask this question, what you bring something. Don't underestimate what you bring to the table. Think about what you bring to the table and how it can influence somebody else. And then as people come to you, think about what they bring to the table, because the people that bring the most to the table are going to allow you to multiply what you have, the opportunity, which allows them to grow. But if somebody comes to you and wants to take something and doesn't add to the overall pie, now we're having a scarcity conversation. We're talking about cutting up the pie. We're not talking about growing the pie, right? So that I think is the key.
Hi, Bo, Kymber. This was really, really good. I'm a new agent with Keller Williams, and I wanted to know what advice would you give to one of your new agents to set them on this path to build wealth building? What is the best advice would you have for a new agent who has been in the company for less than a year, much less than a year, and would love to be on this path, but of course is far, far away from it just yet?
Kymber, you want to take that?
Yeah, I think this idea of like starting, right? Like I think that piece where we talk about the savings part, like that I think is like opportunity number one, is like, where can you start? Even if it is just that savings piece. A lot of people over the last year, right, particularly for agents who've been in the industry, they're like, man, I've got a lot sitting here, right? And for some of them, it's like burning a hole. They're like, what am I going to do with it? And thinking about how having it allows you, and then when Bo talked about those opportunities, to get into the game. The other piece, and one of the things that I'm super passionate about, when we got in the business, I would have agents all the time because we were also investing. And so they would call me, or they would be like, oh, I need an investor. I found this, I have this amazing deal, right? And they were most excited that it was going to create a double-ended commission, that they were going to get the list side and the buy side. If they were really lucky, the developer was going to let them list it when it came back on the market. And literally we'd watch these things and there would be 6-figure plus, right, profits that were happening by the investor. Right. But the agent was getting like what they felt like was a big win. And so I think the ability to be able to recognize, as Bo said, from an insider trade, you see the best deals. So when you become that economist of choice, you know when something comes on the market and it's an amazing deal. And you have the ability to jump in the game, right? So if you've got that gap, if you've created that savings, then you have an ability to get in the game or partner with somebody, not just as the agent, but also as a partner in the project. And I think that's where stuff really starts to move. Being able to not see it.
One thing I'd add real quickly, just really specific. Kymber talked about the investing side. I believe in the real estate sales business. When you start, the biggest mistake you can make is to be focused on your earnings. You will make money on your earnings. Okay. Too many new agents care about their split. They care about this. When you start in the business, You need to be doing transactions. You should be working to learn when you start, which means you should go find people who are doing transactions and be part of the transactions. And you should be willing to do whatever you need to do that. Too many people get into real estate agent. Anybody who's a year into this business, a couple of years into this, they should care nothing about their split. They should care about how much money they make over the course of a year. You can care about that, but care about how many transactions can I do so I can learn. The biggest problem with our business is people make too much money per transaction and they get focused on their split. If you're a new agent and you're trying to make a 90% split, you're actually going to impede your growth. You should go find people, share your money with them, even work for free if you're just starting, but do deals. Doing deals is how you learn real estate, in my opinion. So I would find ways, and don't forget that whatever background you had, just because you're new to real estate doesn't mean you don't bring a lot of skills and you don't have a lot to offer. So figure out what you have to offer to people who are doing a lot of transactions from your prior experience, from your background, from your skill set. You may be bringing something that they don't have, and you might be able to find a way to add that into what they're doing, and that becomes a great synergy.
Awesome. You guys, I'm going to have to bow out because I've got another call that we are jiggering, but Bo's going to stay on for the next few minutes if you have other questions. Thank you guys so much for having us. As you can see, we pack a lot in an hour, but I think we could have used another hour. So
thank you guys.
We could. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You've been good.
So,
It was
We
great.
need another
I know
training.
Bo has a closing, so don't go yet. Don't go yet.
I do want to say, whoever asked the question earlier about how you guys got started, I thank you for asking, because that was my question today.
Awesome. Does anyone have any other questions? We've got a couple of minutes. I'm happy to answer a couple more questions. And then I have one last thing I want to share.
Well, I just had a question. So in this market, when there's like such very little inventory, you know, and especially as a newer agent, how do you kind of claw your way out of that and get some listings when, you know, there's none really to be had?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you know, when I started, I started really doing business in 2005. So I was in the middle of this, you know, bidding war kind of market, and it's even worse now. A couple of things. One thing that's been on my mind that I think is really interesting that people aren't thinking about. Lots of people aren't selling their house or not going into the market because they don't think they're going to get enough money. Yet homes are consistently selling hundreds of thousands of dollars over list price. So one of my questions would be, am I going around to potential people in the area I'm working in my network and asking, what's your move price? We used to, as listing agents, go around and tell people, well, here's what the market says your price is. But today, if I know what people's move price is, you know, I might be able to arrange, and I got some buyers. Those buyers are losing out oftentimes. No home inspection, no nothing, $100,000, $200,000 over list price. You can start to pair some of those people. So our job as realtors is to find where the market is. And right now, the market isn't where people are trying to list properties. It's just the reality of it. So that means that there's some segment of sellers that would be willing to sell, but currently aren't in the market. And so our job today becomes, how do we find them? Right? So just thinking about that, if you switch the question and said, not here's what I think the comps say, but what would be your price? And then that's a price you could bring to a set of buyers and say, hey, are you willing to pay this? And also, I would also, just everyone should know, having been through ups and downs, this stuff doesn't last. This market will change. You know, don't get overly stuck. The world shifts and everyone's like, oh my God, it shifted. It was so surprising. No, it wasn't surprising. The same thing happens over and over again. And if you get in the business long enough, you'll see that this one happened to be a really long one, but usually every 8 to 10 years, there's another cycle and this thing goes around. So, you know, this market's crazy. It won't stay that way forever. But, you know, can you look at the market differently? Because our job is to be creative in matching buyers and sellers.
When you first started, what were your lead gen strategies?
Yeah, my biggest lead gen, and I didn't like calling and stuff. I wasn't very good. I loved being in front of people. So I loved open houses. And so my biggest lead gen strategy was to get in front of everybody in his open house, as many as I could. And then to work my network. I knew a lot of people in the city. So I really tried, and that was hard for me because I had to reposition myself. People knew me as a businessman and a nonprofit leader. And I had to change the way that my network looked at me. I still struggle with that today. Some people look at me as a developer, and like my good friend will like sell their house, like, you understand we're a real estate agent, right? Like, so the ability to, if most of you, right, most of you got one of these little things, little cell phone, right? This thing, I guarantee you, no matter, has a powerful database. If you just took all the contacts in your cell phone and put it in command and had a consistent follow-up and touch with those people to let them know that you were a realtor, you already have a great database. But most people aren't treating their cell phone like it's a database, right? And the other piece was, what groups are you part of? You know, are you these little niche groups? Or, you know, are you part of some sort of faith-based organization? Are you part of Kymber got a ton of business from the Young Moms group in Brooklyn. I played ice hockey, so I got guys on my ice hockey team. We sold houses to all of them. Thinking about where are the places where you have affinity, things you enjoy, and finding people that are in those groups and letting them know that you're a realtor. I think the hardest part sometimes is letting people know and staying with them in that process. Paula, did you have a question?
Hi, yes. Could you go over what you said earlier about the whole depreciation and as a real estate agent and how that works?
Sure. If you think about, there's a whole bunch of appreciations and depreciations that matter when you hold real estate. The biggest impact of owning real estate long-term, right, is really two things. When we have a rental property, we usually most think about what's the cash flow. And we would say, hey, there's a great return. I put up $100 and I got back $5 this year. After I got my rents and I paid all my expenses, that's your cash flow. And most people focus only on the cash flow. The reason why long-term real estate ownership is so powerful and where the real wealth gets created isn't in the cash flow. It's in the two things, the appreciation and the depreciation. So appreciation is that historically, if you can hold the property and survive ups and downs, real estate in America has gone up by about 4% a year. So if you own the property that just broke even, you're making 4% of value every year. And that's 4% on the value of the house, not 4% on the amount of money you put up. Does that make sense? So if you only put up 20%, you're getting 4% on the full value, not on your 20%. So that's how people really make money long term. The second piece that Michael is talking about is you have depreciation. So residential property depreciated over 27.5 years. So basically, from a tax standpoint, the IRS assumes that your property becomes obsolete or useless in 27 years. So basically, on a straight line, they reduce the value of your property every year by depreciation. It's a non-cash item. So you have an expense in your owning of a house that is a fake expense. It's basically assuming that the property becomes worth nothing over a period of time. So 27.5 of the property gets charged as an expense every single year. On commercial properties, it's a different number, 37. But so that amount looks like an expense to you, even though you never had to pay the money out. So when you own a lot of property, you can actually have property that produces a return to you in cash, but on your taxes looks like a loss. Does that make sense?
Plus you're paying off the mortgage.
And you're paying off the mortgage, which is the other big thing.
Three.
Yeah, they're right. Thanks, Michael.
I understand depreciation. What my question is is there something special as a real estate agent that we get to take?
Yes, as a real estate agent, you are considered a real estate professional. So if you are not a real estate agent, your depreciation can only offset. If you are a passive investor in real estate, your depreciation can only offset passive income. So for most people, their passive income would be a return on something like stocks or bonds or something that they own. Because you're a real estate agent, your losses, your depreciation can offset your active income. So your commissions, if you had more if you broke even on your house and had $5,000 in depreciation, it's going to look like you made $5,000 less than to the authorities.
And that's really the big difference here. I'll just wrap this up. So I know you want to do a closing here, Bo. That's the big difference. You could take depreciation to offset your commission income because you're in the real estate business, whereas the average Joe can't do that. So
depreciation on your commission?
The depreciation.
Yes, because it all gets lumped together. So it's treated as, because you're a real estate professional, all your income and all your expenses are treated as one thing. So you can basically use the depreciation to offset your active income from commissions.
Yeah, I would encourage you guys, if you're interested in learning more, to talk to a CPA or your accountant in order to get some more information on that. I just kind of wanted Bo to put it out there to let you guys know there's multiple benefits as realtors to get into the real estate investing business.
Plus, if you put it all in the LLC, you don't pay any taxes on it.
So let's, I'm gonna just, one last thought I had for all of you, and it's great. Thank you all for having us. It's always wonderful to be around such sharp minds and to get to share this information and hear and learn from all of you. So just the last thought, and then we can close it out with anything that you guys have. Harriet Tubman said that every great dream begins with a dreamer, and that you always need to remember that you have within you the strength, the passion, the patience and the passion to reach for the stars, and that in so doing you can change the world. Every great dream begins with a dreamer. Always remember you have within you the strength, the patience and the passion to reach for the stars, and in so doing to change the world. So one of our hopes for all of you is that you dream, and that you reach for the stars, and that you know that you have the strength, the patience, and the passion to make that happen, and in so doing to have an impact in the world. And to me, that pairs with this last quote. I love quotes from T.E. Lawrence. It says that all men and women dream, but not equally. Those who dream at night in the dusty recesses of their minds wake in the day to find that it was vanity. But the dreamers of the day are dangerous men, for they may act on their dreams with open eyes to make them possible. And so, well, we would hope for you that you all are dreamers and that you reach for the stars. My hope for all of you is that you are dreamers of the day, so that you act with eyes wide open to take the steps to make those dreams possible. And you know that if you apply yourselves consistently over time, there's nothing that you can't do in this amazing world of real estate. So thank you all for having us, for letting us be part of your worlds and your day today. And go out and continue doing the amazing work that you do.
Hey, Bo, is this a monthly session, a monthly class that you guys are doing? And will we have access to the recordings?
I'm gonna let Gigi answer that.
We are actually, thank you, Della, for that question. I was going to answer that. Our next session is April 8th, and it will be with Mr. Emmerich Peace. This is going to be a monthly series in our wealth building subcommittee. We have several speakers lined up for the next few months. The next one being the same time, April 8th. So 10 to 11:30, we'll surely send out the invitation to everyone. Emmerich Peace will be our next guest. We're so excited. Thank you so much, Bo, for everything.
Yeah.
This has been phenomenal.
And I just say to you guys, if you guys want more information, you can feel free to reach out as Bo at Menkiti Group, Kymber at Menkiti Group. You can follow us on social media. I'm being pulled in by all our agents to be more social media active. So it's at Bo Menkiti and Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff. And then if you're interested in sort of the bigger long-term concept of how wealth building plays into communities, check out Empower Neighborhoods, empowerneighborhoods.com. It's a network we created to have information further. It'll tell you more about wealth building classes, information on how you can make an impact in the community using real estate as a lever.
Thank you, Bo.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Amazing class. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day. I'm going to vote Menkiti for president.
And one quick comment on the recording. I know a lot of you asked about the recording of this. Emily will post our Tri-State Social Equity Facebook page. We're going to make the recording available there. So if you just go and join that page, you'll have access to this recording and all future Wealth Building Series recordings that Gigi hosts.
What's the name of that page?
It's the New York Tri-State Region Social Equity page. Emily's posting that in the chat in just a second. Thank you both. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate all your support on this.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Awesome. Have a great day, everyone. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
I'm actually going to post that right now for everyone that needs it. Give me one quick second.
There it is. It's right there in the chat.
Oh, you got it?
Group.
There you go.
Yep.
Awesome. So yeah, please feel free to like